Welcome back to the channel of truth, trust, and transparency. Today, I want to talk about your property portfolio plan and the stages in your property portfolio. This is going to be applicable to pretty much everyone, no matter, if you are buy and hold, if you're buy and renovate, if you're buy, sell down and commercial. I'm going to show you what the three main stages are, and then obviously the two either side of that. Now, what's prompted me to put this episode together is that I feel like, there is a lot of misinformation out there, or a lot of people will try to justify their service, justify their existence, overcomplicate things. I see a lot of buyer's agents saying we have the 4-step proven method, we have the Accelerator 1000, we have the DFA BCD method, and all that kind of shit. They overcomplicate it. The method is all the same, my friends of YouTube. It is the exact same. The wrapper and the marketing layer that these guys put over it is the only thing that is different. And I want to run you through black and white, very short video. If you're looking to build a property portfolio, if you're somewhere along the way, what the steps are that you need to take so that you know how to get from point A to destination. And how you get there might change in terms of properties, numbers, and all that kind of stuff. But if you stick to each sort of phase, then I believe that you're going to be in for a good time. Remember, and I say this to people all the time, I will talk about development a lot I'll talk about development a lot on this channel. That's because I spent 10 years working in it. I like it. I like it for me. I like it for my situation. I like it for my portfolio. I like it for the cash and all that kind of things. It might not be suited to you. And so I think the biggest risk that you have at the moment watching YouTube videos is that you can sort of get sidetracked and go down these different routes or go down these different avenues and not be worrying about the number one core focus, which is what you can do with what you have available, your income, where you're at in life, where you live, all those kinds of things. Focus on you, put the blinkers on, put a plan together, and complete these stages, and that is how you will build wealth and success. It's not going to be, I heard a podcast on this, and I heard this guy talk about this, I'm going to go down that route. You need to make sure that what you are choosing is right for you and suits your particular circumstances, suits your property, suits your income available, suits your risk appetite, suits your investment time frame, suits all these things for you. So let me run you through. Now, the first one is going to be, and look, it's mainly these stages here. I'm going to say these are your main three stages. There's one pre and then there's one post. So the first, I wouldn't call it a stage, but the mini stage is the preparation. So what do I mean by preparation? Now, that is going to be potentially seeing a mortgage broker, seeing how much you can borrow, buy, all those sorts of things, seeing where you're at financially. Do you need to prepare and save? Or do you need to pay off debt? If you're interested and you have debts that you want to pay off, go back and flick through the Everything Property podcast episodes. A lot of those very early on ones. I brought on a guy called Lockie Hodgson. It was a guy I used to go to the gym with. He's a great guy. He means well. He had 5 personal debts in his own name, and he just had a shocking system set up. And I worked with him because he's a mate. Brought him on the pod. Worked with him. I didn't charge him anything. I said, look, man, this is what we're going to do. And essentially what we did with him was we just attacked each debt one by one. Each pay, we tucked down each debt. And he sent his money to me. I had an account that was Lockie's savings account. And then once we reached our number, we'd pay off that debt. We'd pay off that debt. And he paid off 5 personal loans and then ended up saving, I believe it was 15 to 20 grand, like almost in the space of like 12 months, maybe a little bit longer. But it just goes to show. And Lockie, average Aussie bloke, has a daughter, single dad, just has a job, loves going to the gym, loves the cycling. That was his preparation phase. So your preparation phase is going to look different for a lot of people. It might be save. It might be pay off debt. It's speaking to your broker, speaking to a broker, your broker. Remember, if you need me to recommend you a broker, I'm more than happy to. I don't get paid by the broker. You can go to them directly, not even tell them that I sent you. But you want to speak to a broker. Depending on what that broker comes back with, if you can work with them, if they resonate with you, if they're good, if they give you that, hey, this is where you're at, this is what you're borrowing at, these are my suggestions on how you fix things. You're going to then have some maybe action items in the preparation stage that you need to fix. So for example, your broker might say, oh, Dave, you can borrow 450,000. However, if you pay off that credit card, or if you pay off, that personal debt, that credit card, and all your HECS, that might be 15, 20 grand, you might be able to borrow up 657. So automatically I go, okay, well, my preparation phase is paying down that bad debt, because that is going to allow me to get into for a better priced asset. Now, obviously, the preparation stage, as I said, it's going to look different for a lot of people. For a business owner, it might be doing your taxes, getting all your PAYG stuff through, but there's going to be a preparation phase. That's the sort of what we do before we start. We need to prepare. We need to talk to everyone. If you're just starting out, maybe it's save money, maybe it's paying off bad debt, speaking to broker or brokers, or it's even putting in place particular structures. So that could be if you're self-employed, that could be setting up trust, it could be all that preparation phase. Whether it happens pre or before you start purchasing, the most important thing that you're going to need to get together is a plan. So we sit down with all our members in our property course and we say, okay, what is the plan? Where are we trying to get to? What's the time horizon? How much money do you have available? Cash savings? How much money are you getting in your 9 to 5? All those kinds of things. You need to put together a plan. The reason is because if you don't have that, the rest of this won't make any sense. Because if you don't have a plan and I say, how many properties do you actually need to hit that passive income goal? You're going to go, oh, well, I figured it's 10, or maybe you've heard that in a podcast, maybe you've heard that in a book. Oh yeah, I'm just going to do 10 properties in 10 years. I want a property a year. Okay, but what's that? What's the end goal? What are the numbers? If you don't know that, it's a good chance. If you don't know that, then it's a good chance that it might not be 10, it might be 6, it might be 5. If you don't have a plan, you're not going to know that. So before you start buying, in either the pre or the start of the first phase, you need to put together a plan. If you don't, fail to plan to fail. Simple as that. Not even worth the argument. Now, after we have that plan in place, we're going to go into stage 1, which is accumulation. Now, this is going to be accumulation phase. What this phase is the buying phase, where you need to hit X houses purchased. How many properties? Link back to your plan. Yeah? Accumulation phase. Now, ideally, friends, we're going to keep a time frame on this. Because if we don't, and we're forever accumulating, remember, those properties down here that we're accumulating after decades and decades and decades, as you know, the compound growth, how these things work, is that those properties that you're buying in 10, 20 years are going to need their growth runs, their growth cycles. So ideally, in an ideal world, we buy the properties that we need for our portfolio in as condensed time frame as possible. Why? Because most property plans, most mortgages, all those kinds of things, if they're over a 30-year period and you're buying one property every 5 years and you need 5 properties, it's going to take you forever to get there. Accumulation phase, you always want to be buying as soon as possible. As I've said before, and as I've said many times, you want to start that compound clock on that property, because we take the best saying in Australian property history is that properties double every 10 years. Well, if you're taking as long as possible, if you're taking 5 years between purchases, you have to wait a very long time to be able to get those properties, even if you need 5 or 10. So The goal of the accumulation phase is to buy the properties that you need as soon as possible. Remember that I've said in my previous videos, you're living your life in seasons. Now, this may mean you need to live in a different season for these couple of years, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, because you're in the accumulation phase. It's not going to be ideal. You might have to be saving money. You might have to be throwing money at it. You might have to go to Bali instead of Italy. You might have to do whatever you can to get the accumulation phase together, consolidated in a specific time frame. You know, it might be one property every year for 5 years. Boom, done, sorted. But we need to plan what this looks like. And if you have a plan in place, so our plans, for example, will tell people where they're at borrowing wise, where they're at cash saving wise, where they're at equity, all those kinds of things. It'll have that in there, because if you can save X amount, X amount per week, we can predict that over a yearly period. We can accommodate for, we can accommodate for holidays, cars, all those sorts of things. And then we can consolidate that and say, okay, well, you will have enough money to purchase a property every 6 months, 1 year, all those kinds of things. So that's why I will bang on this, and you hear me say this 1,000 times a video, is that you need to put together a plan. The next phase, after we've done the accumulation phase. Now, the next phase I would think is accelerate. This is going to look different for different people, depending on the timeline that you have, the cash available that you have, the end goal that you need to get to. What do I mean by accelerate? So after we've done the buying, accelerate might be things like renovations, granny flats, second dwelling. It could be subdivide, develop. It could be subdivide or develop. But essentially what we want to do, we've bought everything, we want to accelerate as quickly as possible. Now, it may mean that after some accumulation, we may need to get into the accelerate phase to accelerate that growth, to accelerate the capital growth that we can produce in the portfolio, so that we can go back and go to the accumulation phase. So you can also, from each of these, you can go back and forth between them. It's not just 1, 2, 3 like that. There is arrows on these, so you can go back and forth between them. This is also going to relate and depend on how involved do you want to be? How hands-on do you want to be? Renovations, do you want to go there and do it yourself? Do you want to be able to pull a full team in? Do you not want to do that? Well, that's going to come back to your plan. Accelerate. It could be renovations. It could be adding granny flats. See my previous videos on granny flats too. It could be adding a second dwelling. So second dwelling, very different to a granny flat. Second dwelling, I can potentially subdivide it off and sell that property off. And then there's the subdivision or development play on that particular block of land. But ideally, after we've accumulated, we want to accelerate the growth of the assets that we have accumulated as quickly as possible. Again, to accelerate our growth, so imagine steady growth like that, accelerated growth like that. We want to make sure that we're picking this one, and that's why we go to the accelerate. We may need to spend 50 grand on a reno to get it revalued, get 150 grand of equity, be able to pull out 100 grand of that. We've got the 50 back for the reno, we've got the 50 back, and now that's my deposit for another stage to accumulate. So accumulation, acceleration. The third and final is the consolidate or the consolidation phase of the portfolio. Now, one thing I will add is the time frame. We need to be quick here. We can go back and forth between accelerate and accumulation, but there is a very good chance, friends and family of the Davey Hamilton YouTube channel, that the gap between these two is going to be years. Why? Let time do its thing. Let those properties double. We don't want to rush through and go to a consolidation phase and try to sell down properties that we've owned only for 2 or 3 years. Ideally, even if that property goes up and has that growth run, I've done it in previous videos, is, say you've bought at 400 and you go, okay, it's at 600, I want to sell. And that market at 600,000 is now at 6%. Well, it's not a $400,000 asset anymore. It's a $600,000 asset that you have that's providing you 6% per year in that particular example. Now we need to give those assets time. I'll drop a little hint in the middle of this video. If you want to know how long it'll take that asset to double, divide the growth rate by 72. That's generally the rule of thumb. And that will tell you how long. So for example, for a property to double in value, it doesn't need to do 10% a year. It needs to do 7.2% per year, because we have the compounding effect of that growth. So that $200,000 property, that $400,000 property is now worth, if it goes up 5% in 1 year, it is now worth $420,000 in year 2, and then so on and so forth. So whatever that growth rate is, divide that by 72, and that will tell you how long you need to hold that property for it to double in value. Obviously, we may be looking at those particular assets that are jumping up and have a really good growth run, but what are they settling back down at would be my question for you. Do you just want that steady performer that's done 6-7%? Do you want to take that right up and then it drop off? That's going to depend on what you want to do for your portfolio. But the consolidation is essentially, we've left these properties years. We talk about portfolios taking 10, 15, 20 years. That's the between these two, right? Allow time. I'm going to put in here, allow time for growth. Allow time for growth. This could be sell down as well. This is where we'd sell down. Now, obviously, I'm not an advocate for selling after 2 years. I've done the videos on it as well. But this might be after 5, 7, 10 years is where we do a sell down, right? We sell down those assets that have performed extremely well. We sell down some of those assets, and it's going to depend what you buy, what you've purchased, and how many you have. Again, what's the plan? How many do we need to sell down? How much growth have they had? It might be they've had phenomenal growth, better than you've expected. You've bought 5. Let's run a practical example here. You've bought 5 properties, right? You've done some renos. You've accelerated them. You've kept all 5. And you've added let's just say you've added as well a granny flat over that time. Now, when we get to the consolidation phase, if out of the 5 properties, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I say it all the time, let's just say you've got additional dwellings on 2, right? Now, depending on the growth of the rest, I might look at this and go, you know what? If I sold down 1 and 2, after I pay my capital gains tax, after I pay all that, I can actually use the debt. I can actually use the profit that I've made after I pay tax to pay down the debt in all 3 of those. So now I've got 3 properties. They could be renting at 30, 40 grand a year by then. And then I've got the granny flats too that rent at 30 grand a year. So that's what the consolidation phase is, to say, okay, what properties can we sell down to pay off the debt in the others? We consolidate that portfolio down. That may even be also, and some of the plans that we've worked on for our members, is it could be a third we sell down. However, the cash provided here, we use it to pay off these, but because they've got the granny flats, they've been paying themselves off too. And then we use the cash to buy a commercial property. Now, the commercial property, it could be a $2 million commercial property that is yielding, it could be, a $1 million commercial property that is yielding 6%. Now, we know if we go out and we buy that in cash in the consolidation phase, it's going to bring in 60 grand a year in rent. And remember, the best thing about commercials, the tenant pays all the outgoings. And so that is essentially a net yield. That 6% is a net yield. You might even go 6.5%. But that's where we go perfect 60 grand here. We've got 2 granny flats producing 30 grand. That's 120,000, and then plus the houses. So that is the consolidation phase. We sell down, reorganize, redistribute. Cash is king, baby. Cash is king. Now in the consolidation phase, remember, I might have been 10, 15 years up to this point. The consolidation phase, I don't want to sell down and then look to buy other growth assets. I want income producing assets. So that's why those acceleration, it could be you consolidate into granny flats. It could be consolidate into something in cash, or most of the time too, it could be commercial, or it could also be sell down X amount, pay off the debt on the others, and hold those residential properties. So there's a few options there, depending on risk appetite, depending on how many properties you need to accumulate, which pulls back to the plan, will depend on how many you need to sell down, how many commercials you need to buy, how many resis you buy. And then that is the third stage. The fourth and final stage is your retirement slash passive income. Passive income. So we've consolidated everything. I now can go into my sort of retirement slash my passive income. To me, it depends on your age here. I think from what I've learned is that you need to remain on this earth with a purpose that gets you up in the morning. Retirement is fun, but from what I hear, a lot of people get bored in that stage. I mean, I'm not there yet, so I can't comment on it. But remember, if you can keep some sort of purpose in that retirement stage, but just know that that passive income, those bills are paid, that mortgage is paid, and all those sorts of things. That's that sort of I'd say fifth and half, or second sort of stage after we go through the main three. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is a non-complicated version of what a property plan should look like, and the three main stages as well as the two sub stages. As always, if you've got any thoughts, questions, or emotions, let me know in the comments. I'm happy to do a part 2 to help you guys out.